Hi, I'm Jillian, and you are listening to The Mindset of Podcasting, where we not only talk about the technical side of launching and managing your podcast, but also about building your confidence in yourself and the power of your voice. Your business and your podcast depends so much on your mindset. So I will be diving deep into the mindset blocks and issues that we go through when starting and running your own podcast so you can feel confident in your message and in your voice. It's time to listen in and feel confident about yourself and your podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Mindset of Podcasting. This is the first episode, and I'm so excited to get to know you guys more. And I thought I would take this opportunity for you to get to know me a little more and tell you about my story of how I became a podcast manager. So my main goal with my business is to help other women use their voices because we can't hold back any longer. It's time for women to be heard, and we all have a message to get out there. So it's time to put that message out there. I want to share a little bit about my story because growing up, I never really used my voice. It wasn't until I became an adult that I finally started using it. Let me tell you a little bit about my journey and how I got to be where I am today. So I was born in Florida. My dad was in the Navy, and that's where he was stationed. I am the oldest of 3 kids. I have a younger sister who is 2 years younger and a younger brother who is 8 years younger. In my childhood, I was pretty quickly labeled shy. My earliest memory is of someone saying that she's shy. Oh, she doesn't talk much. She's shy. So I kind of took on that personality. I'm not sure where it came from or why I was labeled as shy, but hearing it my entire childhood, I just kind of took on that personality. So I would actually fail school projects in school because I wouldn't get up and talk in front of the class. So it pretty much impacted my life, my early childhood life and my education. Even though I was a good student, I did pass. I just wouldn't get up and talk in front of people. I was completely terrified for anybody to look at me or hear what I had to say. As a teenager, I became friends with a group of friends in high school, and I really loved them and hanging out with them. But the more I started to bring my true personality out, I would get made fun of, or somebody would say something that just made me start to retreat again. So I decided I really can't be myself. I need to be who my friends are. So I kind of took on their personality because I didn't feel I could use my own voice and say what I needed to say. At 16, I got my first job at a Dollar Tree. I was very shy and quiet then too. Most of the things I would say to anybody was, "Hi, how are you? Have a good day," because I was a cashier. I didn't really know how to make small talk. I really hope that anybody going through my line just wouldn't talk to me, basically, because I was just really awkward and shy, so I thought. So I got that job in my junior year. I was 16 years old. My senior year, my parents were going through a very messy divorce. So I moved out. As soon as I turned 18, which was in April of my senior year, I moved out and moved in with my boyfriend. So my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, we met when I was 16 and he was 19. He worked at the Dollar Tree with me. Funny story, I actually met his pregnant girlfriend first. She worked at the Dollar Tree first. And then before she went out to have her baby, he lost his job. So she got him her job at the Dollar Tree. So we started dating when I was 17 and he was 20 and his daughter was 10 months old. I never thought I would be dating somebody with a kid, but we ended up the summer before we started dating, we ended up working a lot together. We both worked the 5 a.m. shift. We were stalkers, and our boss, our manager, would always be late, always late. So we would sit on the bench outside the Dollar Tree because we couldn't get in without the manager and just talk. And we kind of got to know each other. He kind of knew his relationship with his daughter's mother was ending. So yeah, he asked me out one day and I was completely shocked because I did start having a little crush on him. But anyways, I moved in with him. So I was living with him when I graduated, and I knew that I was supposed to go to college, but I really thought I needed to make money. I need to have money so that I can continue supporting myself. So I took a full-time assistant manager job at the Dollar Tree so that I could have more money. And me and my boyfriend at the time could get an apartment of our own and support ourselves. which we ended up doing. I knew I was supposed to go to college and I started going part-time, but it really wasn't working out with my schedule. I was just never home. I never had time. So I did end up quitting college. I originally went to be a sign language interpreter, but I just didn't have the time to finish it. So eventually I knew I did not want to stay at the Dollar Tree for the rest of my life. So I went to a trade school and became a medical office assistant. After completing that, I got a job in the emergency room of a hospital. This was my first real world experience and made me really realize how naive I was. And in this type of environment, in an emergency room, you really have to use your voice. You basically have no choice but to speak and to be heard, especially being I was the unit clerk. So my job was to make sure the patients got all the tests that they needed to get. The doctors had everything that they needed to make their diagnosis, make sure that people were admitted and there were beds. And it was a lot of communication with other departments, with nurses, with doctors, with all other people in the hospital. So a lot of communication. So I had to learn very, very quickly to start speaking. And it was terrifying at first, especially answering the phone. Answering my first few phone calls in the emergency room were terrifying. But eventually you do get used to it. And I started using my voice more because I had to. I basically had no choice. So I actually ended up loving that job. Once I got used to it, once I got used to using my voice, it helped open me up a little bit more. And I started to relax and I was able to be myself a little bit more with all my amazing coworkers that I made because I saw them being themselves. We had a lot of different characters in the emergency room. So I got to see them being themselves and it really helped. So during my job in the emergency room, I got married and me and my husband had our first baby, a little girl. I never even thought of staying home with her. Like that was never in my mind. I loved my job. I wanted to go back to my job. I wanted to keep working. So I worked evenings and my husband worked nights. This was not a good schedule with a newborn, not a good schedule at all. We were both exhausted and tired because he would come home and sleep during the day. And I would have to wake up when she got up at 6 a.m. and be up with her. And then I would go to work. And he would have to get up after only getting a few hours of sleep. And he would put her to bed at like 8 p.m. so that he get a few hours of sleep before he went into the night shift. So I wouldn't go to bed until midnight 1 and she would be up at 6. So it just wasn't working. We were exhausted. So I realized I needed to get another job. Plus our oldest, who technically my stepdaughter, but like I said, I started raising her at 10 months old. The issues with her mother, I'm not going to get into because that's not my story to tell, but basically she has been with us the whole time. So she is my daughter. I will call her my daughter. You will hear me say I have 3 kids. She is my oldest because I raised her since she was 10 months old. But our oldest had started school, so I was never seeing her because I had to be to work at 3. She would get out of school at 3, so I never saw her, and she would be in bed by the time I got home. So I knew I needed to find a day job. So I switched to medical records at the hospital, and that area also made me realize if you didn't speak up, you were going to get stepped on. And eventually I got tired of people using me and making me do their work because I wouldn't say anything. So I started using my voice more and saying, hey, do your own damn work. I did get in a fight with a coworker, not like a physical fight. We did scream at each other. So yeah, I was really learning to use my voice and to stand up for myself because I was tired of getting walked all over. So I ended up really loving that job too. Most of my coworkers, once the bad ones left, because they eventually left, we became like family. And then a bigger hospital bought out our little hospital and laid off 14 of my coworkers, leaving just 3 of us in the department, just 3 of us employees. And there were so many changes, and this big hospital made it perfectly clear that they did not care about us, that I became very miserable. I hated my job. I hated going to work. I would get to work and I would put my headphones in and listen to podcasts all day long. That is what I would do. So I've been listening to podcasts for a very long time. I love podcasts. I've listened to so many different ones. So I knew at that point it was time for a change. I needed to get out. So this is where my entrepreneur story begins. And I think like most people, I started with an MLM. The first month I made money and it was fun and it was great. But after a while, I was spending more than I was making. It wasn't fun anymore. and I knew it wasn't for me. So then I heard that you can make money by writing a blog. So I started a blog. It was fun at first, but then I also soon realized I hate writing. Like, I really hate writing. I'm not the best writer. So in 2018, my husband took ownership of a small local coffee shop, and one of his employees was leaving. So as soon as I heard that, I took this opportunity to get out of the hospital and I joined my husband in his business. It was not just a rush decision, even though I really wanted to do it. I actually sat down. I had to look at our finances. I had to make sure that it was feasible insurance-wise. I was going to lose my insurance because I was the main insurance carrier. Since he was an entrepreneur, he didn't have his own insurance. So we had to look at a lot of things. And once I figured that all out, I was like all in. I was like, I need to get out of here for my own sanity. Well, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Being in the coffee business wasn't my dream. It was my husband's dream. He loves coffee. He roasts his own coffee. I'm going to give a shout out to him. Go check out Big Nerd Coffee Company. He's amazing. He roasts everything himself. I knew I still needed to find something that lit me up, that I wanted to do for me. So I started learning about how you can be productive and your energy changes with your menstrual cycle. So I'm like, great. This has really helped change my life. Once I started working with my menstrual cycle, I'm going to be a menstrual cycle coach. So I started working on that business and helping clients balance their cycle with their work and their life. And again, I loved it for a little while, but quickly realized that I did not enjoy coaching. I enjoyed working on the back end of my business way more than I enjoyed coaching. So then I saw a post for someone looking for a virtual assistant. And I was like, I love doing the back end of my business. So why can't I get paid to do that for somebody else? So this is the first time I actually really used my voice, and I got on an IGTV and I told everybody how I was switching from a menstrual cycle coach to a virtual assistant. And it was a really hard video to make because I thought people would see that I was sketchy, that I wasn't like really serious about what I did, you know, all the things that go through your mind. But I'm like, I'm going to make this video and I'm going to talk about how I still work with my menstrual cycle, but I'm not going to coach about it. Well, a menstrual cycle coach found that IG video and she reached out to me the next day. And within a week, I became her VA. Like, I couldn't believe it happened that fast. And at first, I had a really hard time setting boundaries because I wanted to do amazing work for her, but I was working all hours. It was really hard. But once I started setting my own boundaries, and she was so supportive of them too, because she was setting her own boundaries. So she was supportive of me setting my boundaries. It became a lot of fun and I loved working with her. So becoming a VA allowed me to scale back at the coffee shop. We hired another employee to cover me, and I started only working Saturdays at the coffee shop, which I still currently work Saturdays at the coffee shop because it's our busiest day and my husband needs help. Our daughter also works there. My mom works there. My sister works there. Like, we have a lot of employees on Saturday because it's super busy. We have like 6 or 7 employees working, where through the week it's 3 or 4. This VA client, I was working on her podcast also, and I absolutely fell in love with all the behind the scenes of the podcast, doing all the editing and the show notes and writing all the things. I loved it. And I'm like, I love listening to podcasts. I listen to podcasts more than I listen to music. And I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to work on people's podcasts. I would get so excited on the days I would work on her podcast than any other stuff. So I started to truly embrace it. And like, I still love it. It's been over a year and I absolutely love it. And I get to help others share their voice, which I didn't get to do for myself for so long. And I want to make sure that I'm helping others share their voice and getting their message out, because I was scared to do that for so long. Plus, I get to do it in my pajamas. You know, I don't have to be on camera or anything. I can wear my PJs and work. So nothing is better than that. So that's kind of my entrepreneur story. A few things I forgot to mention. I had another kid in between all of this. When I was working in medical records at the hospital, I had a son. He was born at 36 weeks, but he was born not breathing. That was a very scary time for me. And he was in the NICU for a month on a ventilator for a little while. It was a very scary time. And a week after he came home, I ended up in the hospital with a blood clot in my legs, and I had one in each lung. So that was scary. I was in the ICU for 2 weeks. And by the time I got out of the ICU, my maternity leave was over and I had to go back to work. I feel like I missed that connection with him as a newborn. I didn't get to spend basically the first 2 months of his life with him. So it was really hard time for me, especially going back to work to a place that I hated, because this was the time that big hospital took over the smaller one. So that was a really difficult time. And let me just say to all those parents with babies in the NICU, you don't lose that connection. Like, my son is 10 now. We're very close. He doesn't remember that time. That bond is still there no matter what. Now I am a full-time podcast manager. I am loving it. I have amazing clients. I love every single one of my clients and their podcasts, and I love helping them get their message out. And it has been amazing. I still work Saturdays at the coffee shop and a few evenings and other things here and there, but I love it so much and I couldn't be happier. So I just wanted to tell you my story because what you see on social media is not always, the journey. My social media looks great now because I'm doing what I love and I'm living my best life, but it took a lot of years to get there. I was miserable for 6 years at my job. 6 years. That is a long time to be miserable at a place that you work. So it's not all rainbows and sunshines. I did a lot of trial and error, tried a lot of different things. And you know what? I finally found what I love. And when you find it, you will know. You will start to feel so aligned. So that is my story. And I am so excited to be having some more guests on to share their story, their mindset. I wanted to call this the mindset of podcasting because a lot of my clients don't start podcasts or are afraid to start podcasts because of that inner critic inside them of that, oh no, there are so many podcasts about what I'm talking about. Nobody's going to want to hear my voice. There's a lot of mindset issues to starting a podcast. So not only am I going to be talking about the technical stuff, but I will be talking about the mindset, the thinking behind starting a podcast. Now let's get to the let's just chat section of the podcast. So at the end of all my solo episodes, I will be doing a let's just chat. And I will be telling you some podcast tips, some things going on in my business and my life, and just random things I want to talk about. So in this section, my podcast tip of the week for you is there is now a share button on Spotify where you can share your podcast directly to IG. This way, if you have a podcast and you share it on your stories, you can click that little arrow from Spotify, share it to your IG stories, and then you can say, go download this episode on Spotify to listen to it later. That way, if they can't listen to your episode right now, you can tell them, go download it, and that will remind them to listen to it later. So I think this feature is amazing. I know a lot of people use Spotify to listen to podcasts because they don't have Apple phones or anything like that. So this is a new amazing technique that you can do in your IG stories so people remember to listen to your podcast later, plus you get the download numbers. So what's going on in my business? Currently, I am working on a launch for a client. She's launching on January 31st. So I'm getting everything set up. A launch takes a lot more time. My launches usually I ask for 6 to 8 weeks because there's a lot of behind the scene work you need to do. Apple takes its sweet time to pick up a podcast. It can take anywhere from like 2 to 14 days, depending on Apple. So launches usually take a longer time. And I'm so excited to be launching this client's podcast. I will share more on that over on my IG. And what's going on with my life? I am really working on my energy. And part of that is making sure I feed my body what it needs and move my body how it needs to be moved. Because I realized that this was holding back a lot of my energy, not eating things that actually energize me, not moving my body as much as I should. So my goal is to have more energy. And I am doing that by mostly trial and error. I am actually seeing what gives me energy. When I eat something, I'm seeing how it makes me feel. And if it makes me feel sluggish, I'll know to maybe not eat that as much or eliminate it from my diet. But really, I'm just doing a lot of data. What makes me feel good when I move? What kind of exercises? Right now, cycling. I'm loving cycling in the morning because it's just easy to do. I'm not fully awake, but it's just easy to get on there and do that. And then I've been doing some strength training in the afternoon, and that's been feeling really good. So I'm just kind of collecting a lot of data, what gives me energy and what doesn't. So thank you so much for listening to this first episode. I'm so excited to share the rest of the episodes with you. Go listen. Right now, there are episodes with amazing guests that are live. So go listen to them. Remember to leave a review. Click whatever app you're listening to this in and leave a 5-star review. Let me know how you're liking it, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you so much for listening. Are you ready to launch your podcast and get your message out to the world, but the thought of all the tech, equipment, and the fear of the unknown is holding you back? Stop worrying, because I can help guide you through it all. Launching a podcast is an exciting time, but it can quickly become overwhelming trying to figure out everything you have to do to get your show out to the world. Let's work together to make a fantastic podcast show that your audience will want to listen to every week. We will work closely together for 6 weeks to prepare for your launch. Accelerated packages are available. I will be your guide as I help you select and set up everything you need to get your podcast out to the world. Go to jilliangrover.com/launch to learn more or to book your discovery call with me.